Hello, everyone. My name is Mark from the Misplay Podcast, and you're listening to EternalJourney, everyone's favorite Eternal podcast.
Welcome to EternalJourney, the podcast.
Greetings, all my knights and Pandavans out there. You are listening to EternalJourney, the podcast that talks about all things eternal with a focus on limited play. I'm your host, Jedi, and this is episode 100 of the podcast, where we have a lot of news to dish out today. We received a draft update where they flipped the script on the packs. We're going to be talking about the cards that they added to the format, and as well as some large strokes about how to attack the format. We finally got our organized play announcement for this upcoming year, and then a couple of quality of life changes that happened that were actually pretty good listening to the community. But first one, as usual, welcome my great friends on the show, starting with Darth_Herman2. Alex, how are you, friend?
Hey, hanging in there. How's it going?
Going swell, my brother, going swell. On the opposite side of the internet, we have Johnholio.
What's up?
Holla.
Right. Going full Holio tonight.
Fair enough. Ain't nothing wrong with that. We had the video version, and you could see the I mean, I guess we do have the video version, but I'll have you on screen.
Not me, though.
Yeah. Have the shirt pulled over the head.
Yeah, I did that, so you couldn't see it, but it was there.
Fair, I believe it. So with that, speaking of the video version, you can catch us on YouTube, EternalJourney.com, or EternalJourney.com, wow. YouTube.com/EternalJourney, where you can catch the video version of our shows to include draft videos, constructive videos, etc., etc. Like, we'll have my tournament runs on there from the upcoming organized play season. Woot woot. Of course, you can catch me live at twitch.tv/Jedi_EJ every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. And of course, I'd like to give shout outs every week to the supporters of the show. So once again, an ongoing support to all the people that continue to support the show through Twitch subs and just Discord hangouts and all that good stuff. Of course, a couple of standout people, no new members in the Jedi Order this week, but the Jim Joe and Lurking Zerban both made a year subbing the channel, which is pretty awesome. Really do appreciate that. So I'm gonna have to start working. We're creeping on a bunch of people hitting the 2-year mark, so I got to come up with a new promotion ceremony or something special to do for them. And of course, our very own Captain Cal Shadowstep coming with a 9-month sub. Really appreciate you, friend. Thank you guys once again to everyone that supports the show. It really means a lot. But we have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive right into it. We'll start off with our Pack 1 Pick 1, which is the first one for this new, I guess, season, for lack of a better term. Anyway.
Yeah.
Right? I feel like that's what it feels like, a new draft season, not really quite a format. I mean, they do a pretty good job of making it feel like a different format, but it's also, yeah, we'll go with that. We'll go with draft season. So we have Rumbling Contraption. This is a 6/4 engine for 7. Overwhelm, Summon, Exhaust, Rumbling Contraption. Succumb is a 4 shadow spell. The enemy player sacrifices an accursed unit of their choice, then discards cards from the top of their deck equal to its attack. Auric Official is a 1/1 Minotaur Soldier for 4 Justice. Imbue, Surge, +1/+1. Grave Watch Ancestor is a 2/3 Elf Cultist for 3 time. Ultimate, pay 6 to give Grave Watch Ancestor plus attack and plus health equal to the highest health among units in your void. Wisdom of the Elders is a 3 primal fast spell. Draw 2 cards. Token of Tradition is depleted power, and you can choose from Time, Justice, or Primal Influence. Siege Provisions is a 2 Justice relic. Once per turn, you may pay 3 to give one of your units +2/+2 and Endurance this turn. Spellcraft 1, play Endure, which makes a unit invulnerable to damage this turn. And finally, for our commons is Argentport Soldier, your vanilla 3/2 soldier for 2 Justice. Going into the uncommons, we have Rust Machine as a 3/2 Grenadin for 3 Fire. When you play a spell with cost 5 or more, play 2 Rustlings with Decay. 2 1/1 Rustlings, correction. Ultimate, pay 4 to get +5 power this turn. Display of Knowledge is a 3 cost knowledge influence, so time Primal Shadow fast spell. You get to choose from putting an attacking enemy unit on the bottom of the enemy deck, or draw a relic from your deck, or give one of your units +2 attack and quick draw permanently. And finally, Terrazon Echo, a 1/2 dinosaur illusion for 2 primal. It has Berserk. When Terrazon Echo attacks, it gets +1/+1 this turn for each spell you have played this turn. Summon, Plunder. And then finally, rounding off the pack with our rare is Albin Fallen. This is a 3/3 soldier for 5 double Elysian, Aegis, Charge, Endurance. Summon, enemy units are reckless and can't fly until your next turn. Corrupted 2. All right, so John, what are you looking at in this pack?
Man, this one is this is like not a great pack to me. I don't know, like I don't even know where to start really. Like I guess I'm mostly just looking at the Rust Machine, and like I guess I mean, as crazy as it sounds, I might even be down to pick this Display of Knowledge here because this pack is just so medium to me. Um, other cards I like are like Wisdom and Siege Provisions, but Wisdom is double primal, so it's not really splashable if I don't end up in primal, and like Siege Provisions, if I'm in Justice, those things are always available, it seems like. And I don't know, it's a new format, but I think that's still the case in the drafts I've seen so far. So I feel like if you're in Justice, you can always get a Siege Provisions if you want one. And like Rust Machine, I know in the last season, I guess we just called it, right? Like anytime I was in a fire deck, I would only have like maybe one way to even have a 5-cost spell. Like none of them quite got there on the spells. So like I didn't even like Rust Machine that much in the last season. So, but picking it early, you can kind of make it work, right? So I think it's probably Rust Machine. But yeah, I'm also I'd be down to just take this display because I do think this display is like the most powerful card in the pack. But yeah, the 3 factions is rough, right? But you're really not giving up a lot, so I'd kind of be down for that. But yeah, I'd probably just pick the Rust Machine here.
Yeah, we'll talk about fixing here in a little bit as well. All right, Alex, what about you, buddy?
Yeah, it's a pretty unimpressive pack. I'm with John. I think the safest pick would just be the Rust. Was it the Rust Machine? It's not a horrible pack one pick one. And the display is, it is early, so it's, if you're going to take one, you would take it now, but it is very committing to those colors. So I think I would stick with the wrestling here. Not wrestling, the Rust Machine.
Yeah, you guys said it. Yeah, everything you guys said is correct. I do put a little more value in Siege Provisions, and I am looking at the Gravewatch Ancestor as well, but I think Rust Machine is still just all around good. And with Amplify cards, I'm with John. Inherently, there's not a lot of ways to trigger Rust Machine, but there are Amplify cards in the format, so sometimes that helps you get there. But yeah, I'm on Rust Machine as well. All right. That'll do it for our pack one pick one, which means we go into our main topic where we are going to be discussing the draft update. So as we are coining it, it is a new season, and Direwolf normally does their traditional flip the script on the pack. So now we are drafting the Eternal Draft Pack, Empire of Glass, and then Eternal Draft Pack, which makes it a little more interesting because inherently these draft packs are a lot larger of a pool of cards to choose from. Direwolf has implemented a system where they weight the cards differently, so you see certain cards more often. So that's an adjustment. So they're able to interject cards for the expedition format for constructed without really affecting the draft format too much. They did add 84 cards, and you can catch the full breakdown in the article that I'm linking in the show notes. They added 84 total cards, with a good chunk of them being rares and legendaries. But we are going to be talking about some commons and uncommons today that we feel like stand out, and cards we should be looking for, or you should be looking for, and then maybe give you some broad strokes about potentially how to attack the format going forward. Because believe it or not, doing the draft order or changing up the draft packs definitely adjusts the way you do deck building for certain. Once again, you can catch the full breakdown in the show notes link. So with that, let's go ahead and dive right into it. And starting off with the usual suspects, fire. None of the cards we'll talk about here in a minute. Oh yeah, and the weighted now are ×1, ×5, ×10, and ×20. So you're definitely going to notice a difference with these ×20 cards. You will see them pretty much every single draft, I feel like. So just be on the lookout for that. But going in the fire, we see some support for Grenadins kind of growing, which both you can go Skycrag Grenadins and Stone Scar Grenadins. And we see the inclusion of Assembly Line, which is an absolutely phenomenal card, i.e. it is a 3 fire spell, and it simply gives you 3 Grenadins. So of note, Grenadins are not as good as Rustlings, but the fact that you're getting 3 off of 1 card, on par on power as well, because 3 power for 3 1/1s is really solid. So that's a really strong card. That is weighted ×10. I think that's going to be a very big enabler for these Grenadin decks and give you chump blockers and just sack fodder and whatnot. The other side to that as well is they're adding Disassembler, which is just a solid 2/2 for 2 Grenadin for 2 fire. But when one of your Grenadins dies, deal 1 damage to the enemy player. So that's a really good way to capitalize on having these 1/1s chump block, or sending in your more modified larger Grenadins like your Cyber Hounds and things like that. The 3/3s that get in and could potentially trade are additional ways to get in more damage. And it really feeds into the Stone Scar version that has multiple sack outlets like Metal Fang and Grizzly Contest and Devour to get additional value off of your Grenadins. That one's ×10 as well. And then finally, into the Furnace, 2 fire fast spell, deal 2 damage to a unit. If there's a Grenadin in your void, Into the Furnace deals double damage instead. So it does say double damage instead of additional damage, which means by itself it would do 4 damage at fast speed, which is quite powerful, especially at 2. But if you are running some of the Grenadins, which I'm forgetting now, but the robotic armadillo looking like one, then this thing could potentially do 3 and 6 damage. So that is something to keep in mind as well. And it's boosted ×10, so you will be seeing this as well. So keeping that on the radar, I think, is extremely powerful, because 4 damage at fast speed, it can do a lot in combat, I think. And of course, it's just straight fast speed, so I think it does a little more work than even Lightning Strike does, where you can play around that a little easier. And that's what stands out to me with fire, really pushing the Grenadins. What do you think, John?
Yeah, so I agree. Like, it seems like they just added support to Grenadin in general and just added some fire cards. Like, right? There's nothing like nothing really else stands out here. It seems like they kind of replaced, like, we were seeing not chemical rounds, I'm sorry, Conflagate relatively often in the last season. That went from 5 times to 1 times. But like, that's essentially just been replaced by the Into the Furnace that you mentioned at 10 times now. And like Decay was 5 times as well. So like those are both 1 times now. But yeah, so they're just essentially replaced with Into the Furnace. And like, if you're playing fire, it's, even if you're not in a Grenadin tribal deck of any kind, like, it's so easy to get like 1 random Grenadin in your void in a game of drafts to enable Into the Furnace. So that's going to be a very good card, like you said. Anything else standing out here? Oh yeah, and like, one of the other only interactions like that in these packs was Pillage as well, which was 5 and is now 1 times. So yeah, those have all been just directly replaced with this Into the Furnace.
Yep.
Yeah, nothing else really stands out here other than like Valley of the Ancients going to 10 times from 5. That's kind of like adding a little bit more support into that 5 cost spell matters, because that was like a big deal, last format, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it hasn't really, like, they didn't really support it in the last season of draft. And it's like all these 5 cost matters cards were still there in the packs, but like it just wasn't that supported. So I think they added a little support to that archetype as well, it looks like.
Of note too about, I was actually just looking at that as well, the fact they bumped up to ×10. The other thing about that as well is that it does provide you a somewhat of a level of fixing, right, with the added influence at the tail end of that card.
That's another theme that they added, I think, just in these draft packs in general, is they just upped the level of fixing available a lot.
Yep.
So good point there.
Moving right along into time, nothing really stands out too much. I mean, there's Inner Peace Ascendant and Lucky Prospector, as well as Sirocco Glider and Staff of Speed. None of those cards really stand out to me, but the one powerhouse that we're seeing come back is Waystone Gate. This one is going to be ×10. And this card, John, or actually Alex, why don't you go ahead and just talk about how ridiculous Waystone Gate is?
I mean, it's the best of everything that I know we like to do in Eternal. It fixes you. It's going to make sure you hit your land drops, and it's going to pay you off with a huge 8/8 unit. It's going to go in every single time deck. It's splashable. It helps you splash. It's just a great card. If you're in time, you're going to want it.
Yeah, and what makes it worse too is that it's in time in a format that has restorative process, which is a fairly easy way to get relics back. So
Oh yeah, for sure.
Doing this to get your power drops, getting the 8/8, and then bringing it back along with a Sentinel later on is just absolutely preposterous and backbreaking.
And there's also it's also just there's already support for wanting relics in your void, and that's this one goes there pretty easily. So more support for that. This card's amazing. It's 10 times. Like you're gonna be seeing this is this is a format defining card, right? Like, who cares about Basher now? Basher's just gonna be recklessing into an 8/8 now and getting wrecked.
Pretty much. I mean, it is significantly slower than Basher, but yeah,
I'm being superfluous, but yeah.
But it's still extremely powerful. This card is just great. If you see it, take it if you can. It's fantastic. Speaking of cards that synergize with it, we have Ancient Excavator is back. It's been in the packs, but now it's bumped up from ×5 to ×10. And it's just great. It works with the Sentinel synergies. It's a 4/6 body, which blocks Basher. It blocks the 5/5 Sentinel off of Okessa's Audience. And it's great against aggro decks. But then summon, draw a relic from your void, which obviously gets back, much like what John was talking about. There's various relics in this format that want to go to the void for benefit, to include Waystone Gate, and you can easily get it back without costing you a card. I mean, a 4/6 body for 5 with additional synergies is really solid. So keep a lookout for that card as well. It's one of my all-time draft favorite cards, I think. That's gonna do it for time. Tower Top Patrol did go down from ×10 to ×5, so we're gonna see that significantly less, as well as Manning Whisper. And I think that's about it that really stands out to me.
I feel like I wasn't seeing those cards that much already, so yeah. Even less now.
Yeah. I was still seeing Tower Top Patrol, but I think Whispers being an uncommon, definitely, I didn't see it very often. I feel like Justice got the hose, to be honest with you, and that's fine, because I think they were one of the strongest factions for a while now. They had various soldiers added to them, as well as Valkyries, and I'll be honest with you, none of them really impressed me all that much. At the rare slot, we did get Avagraft, so keep an eye out on that. It's just good removal. It's not super busted in any which way, but it combos really well with Rageheart Paladin that's in the format. The one thing that I do want to mention is Kasul Recruit. Not a very flashy card, a 3/3 soldier for 3 justice with pledge, but it's at ×10. But the card is it's a good filler card, a solid card to have in your deck. A 3/3 for 3 is completely respectable. The fact that it has pledge means that it kind of helps clean up your draws in some regards. And then it's a soldier, so we obviously know there's soldier decks in this format. So I think that's a solid addition versus none of the other really soldiers or Valkyries really stand out to me. As far as cards, go ahead, John.
I was just gonna say the Silverwing Purge Leader. You don't think that's gonna be a pretty powerful flyer in this format? Like the 3/4 stat line kind of stands out to me, like as just big enough that it's gonna matter, and it's a ×10 card.
Like, I thought about that, but I feel like I'm thinking about all the Sentinel decks and stuff, and it is a format with a bunch of small flyers, but I wonder if they're too well established before then, right?
I don't know. Like in my mind in the last season, right? Like most of the flyers are X1s, 3/1s, kind of at the most, and then like one of the biggest ones was almost always my air support, right? And that's a 3/2, and so it can't tussle with this. Unless you did a whole grafter boost on it, right? And then it can trade. at 4/3 stat line. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think like this is a format where that 3/4 stat line might be meaningful. So I think that's one to keep an eye on.
No, I think you're right. I might have been putting a little too much weight in the whole tribute lifesteal thing because I remember trying to enable that in previous formats wasn't exactly the easiest thing.
Yeah,
But
this card
I
in
think you're
previous
right.
formats, that stat line at 6 cost was not quite there.
What do you think, Alex?
I think this guy potentially can be a good top end. It's not to be discounted, but I don't think I want too many of them. But I like one in the deck. I do like.
Yeah. And it blocks most of the Valkyries in the format as well.
Yeah.
See, that's the other thing too, though. If you're going to 6, what that 5/5 that we never play, that one's 7, right? This 5/5 Valkyrie and fire is 7.
Correct.
Yeah, and maybe that's part of it is that I just never play that card.
Well,
So maybe
7 is too much, right? Like,
yeah. Because
No
I mean,
one
a
plays
5/5
it.
flyer is fantastic, but
it would be.
so yeah,
but
you're probably
you just don't get to like there's a big difference in an average draft game between 6 cost and 7 cost, right? Like
Mhm.
that's a number of turns on
Yeah.
average.
Couple other things on the cards that stayed in the packs. Talent of Nostrix goes from ×10 to ×2. That's the +2/+2 weapon for 2 justice or relic weapon. That was just a good kind of early interaction for justice. That's going down to ×5, which means you're not going to see it as often. So keep that in mind. And an Unbreakable Tradition, the 5 justice fast spell that doubles a unit's attack and health permanently and gives you double time or double primal influence is up to ×10. So be on the lookout for that card because that can kind of win out of nowhere as well. But it isn't uncommon in the draft pack. So I don't think anything else stands out to me, right, John?
No, not really.
All right, going into Primal, 2 of the cards that stand out to me. Primal, once again, they're getting some rares and stuff, some fun cards, but Biting Winds is back, and this is absolutely great. And I think it's even better now because people aren't really quite playing around it just yet until they get used to it. So I think that's awesome. Biting Winds is a 3 primal fast spell, deal 6 damage to an attacking enemy. And man, that really kills a lot of things in this format. So that's ×10. Went to one of my favorite cards when it's in every format. I think it's still pretty good here. John, what do you think?
Yeah. There's holding up 3 is an obvious cost, but yeah, like it's not like you know when you want to hold it up or not and whether it's worth it, right? Like
Yeah, and it gets rid of Basher, and they can't really help. Like they can't do anything about it because of the Reckless on Basher. So
yeah,
that's another upside for it as well.
a lot of times the plan with Basher as well was to boost just the attack, right? With Scythe Slash a lot of times, like, and just get a 2 for 2 essentially, forcing the opponent to double block whatever. But yeah, now you're just trading it for a Biting Winds, which is not ideal. And like, this you can also just get it doesn't just it's not just good for Basher, right? We always liked going face when people would do a relic weapon attack with Biting Winds in the format, and people will do a big buff just to get in like 10 damage out of nowhere on like a Berserk Flyer in the format and things like that. So cards like Biting Winds go up in value when people are doing that sort of thing. And yeah, like Lightning Strike was what we had last season, and it just didn't with Basher being the big public enemy number 1, it didn't quite get there, right?
Yep. Now it's interesting because we're in a format that has relics that want to go to the void, so they don't really stick around, but we're getting 2 cards added at ×10 that we've seen be pretty powerful in previous formats. So Alex, tell me what you think about the addition of these 2 cards. We have Book Club Yeti, which is the 3/1 Yeti for 2 primal. Sacrifice Book Club Yeti to deal damage to an enemy unit equal to the highest cost among your relics, so the ones in play. And Akantha's Outrider is a 3/3 elf serpent with flying and pledge for 6 primal. But if you have a relic in play, Kanta's Outrider costs 3 less, i.e. you get a 3/3 flyer for 3 that we've seen be extremely powerful, especially when you do drop one on turn 3 and one on turn 2, or I'm sorry, turn 4. So what do you think of these cards, Alex?
I mean, these are just great limited, great limited cards. The Yeti's good on 2. It's a 3/1 that can, really put a hurting on your opponent's life total if they don't have an answer. It synergizes great with relics, obviously, as a removal. Yeah, I like the Yeti a lot. I haven't seen it though, so I'm surprised it's times 10. I haven't seen a single one of those Yetis. The Outrider, I haven't had the chance to draft any of those. Opponents have had those, but that's just a great, it reminds me of the Shadow one that we'll probably talk about, the 2/1 that you get a 6/4 if you kill a relic. It's like the blue one of that. It's like you just get a 3/3 for 3, which is pretty awesome. Yeah, I like both of those cards a lot.
Yeah, and the fact that they come down early, I think, helps a little bit because it gives you time to kind of get your value out of them before you want to sack the relics that you do play. So I think there's some upside there. It's going to be interesting to see how the interaction works. Another card I want to talk about is Yeti Traditionalist. This is a 3/3 Yeti for 4 primal with Overwhelm and then Muster +2/+2 permanently. The Muster is playing a attachment and a spell in the same turn. This card, in the right deck, it could do some serious damage because a 3/3 Overwhelm for 4 is just fine, maybe a little under par. But when you muster one time, this thing all of a sudden is a 5/5 Overwhelm. That's really solid. And if you're able to muster at fast speed or even do it twice, so it's something like a 7/7 Overwhelm, that could be extremely powerful. It's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. Muster inherently is one of the less popular mechanics because it's a little more difficult to pull off, considering that you're required to do 2 things in one turn, and the timing might not always work out. But there are cards in the format like the relics that have spellcraft, things like I always forget. It's the one that plays Lost in the Mist, the time one, as well as siege provisions. And then we're going to talk about it here in a minute, but Sodi's Choice is back in the format. So the cards that essentially can give you muster off of one card is really powerful. I don't think this card is broken by chance, but it's definitely can win games. I don't know if either of you guys have any experience with Traditionalist on either side of the board.
Yeah, it was deceptively good in the last format it was in. And you didn't mention the one card that I think of going with this as well, Cobra Gear. Because it has Overwhelm, that deadly, that guarantees, if it's blocked, all but 1 point of damage is getting through, right?
No, yeah, good point. Very good point.
So, yeah, and then, like you said, we're about to talk about it, but Changey Stick also musters.
Oh, yeah, very good point. And yeah, on a huge dude like that, yeah, John, go ahead and talk about Changey Stick. That is ×5. It's a +1/+1 weapon for 2 primal. Flying, and then Spellcraft 5, play Polymorph, which turns a unit into a 1/1 sheep.
Yeah, Changey Stick is amazing. It's one of the best draft commons in the game. Period. It's one of the few cards that was nerfed at one time because it was too good in draft, and it's still just one of the best. It's amazing. It's great as just pay to give something flying and +1/+1. Like for example, your Barricade Basher. Flying 6/6s on turn 4 are really good usually. And then it's great late game too. Polymorph that basically kills anything. It turns the most terrifying threat your opponent has into a 1/1 frog. It's great.
Two cards we've talked about here have made something happen that wasn't happening before, which is being kind of led into primal by cards like Changey Stick, which is just a great first pick because it's splashable, and then also Biting Winds. With those cards being pushed, I've seen me be in primal more often than I was before, for sure.
Yeah, very solid point. Very solid point.
Yeah,
let's see.
A lot of good primal cards here.
Some of the cards, let's see, cards that were capped. Nothing really spectacular standing out to me. Two things of note. Lightning Strike goes from ×10 to ×1, so you're gonna see a lot less of that. But John talked about it a little bit earlier in the show. or before the show that just because of Basher being public enemy #1, you didn't really see too many lightning strikes, and Primal not being a very popular color. Spellbound Sign goes from times 5 to times 1, so you're rarely going to see that, if at all. And then John, talk about Forbidden Research that is went from times 5 to times 10.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they just took all these double influence kind of fixing cards, right, and boosted them a little bit because they're just generally supporting a little more fixing. I like Forbidden Research just as a draft card, just for the filtering. Like digging 3 is pretty great. You're not really going up cards, right? But that's getting pretty deep. And it's fast too. So if you have cards in your deck such as Biting Winds, you're not really taking the turn off by holding up the power, as long as you have options of things to do where, like, I can either kill this guy, and if I don't have to, boom, Forbidden Research, right? Like that kind of thing.
Yeah, solid, definitely good filtering, hand sculpting, solid card to keep a lookout on. Let's see, going into Shadow. I actually didn't write any of these cards down in the show notes, so I guess none of these are most of these are rares. I guess something to talk about. Sadistic Glee is back in. This card it seemed good. I wouldn't say good. It seemed fine. Times 10. Sadistic Glee is a 5/5 nightmare for 6 primal. Summon. The enemy player reveals the top two cards from their deck for each of your units. So mainly just a 5/5 for 6 isn't really great in this format because there's a lot cheaper 5/5s. Sometimes the mill comes into play. It being a nightmare is kind of irrelevant in this format, but I wanted to throw it out there. It doesn't really stand out to me.
I really like it as a market card. Like, you can kill someone with it out of the market, at late game.
Yeah, that's a good call, right? The game kind of goes late. You guys are both close to about 10 cards or whatnot. You have stalled board states. You could play this and just mill anywhere from 8 to 12 cards and get them. Yeah, that's a good point.
If you're playing the card like Spore Spitter, right? Is that the one I'm thinking of? The
Deep Water Vines?
No, I'm sorry. I might be naming the wrong card. I'm thinking of like the 4/4 that cares about the number of cards in your opponent's board.
That's life steal.
Oh, yeah. Spore Spitter. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, like that was looking pretty good in the last season, and like they added some kind of even further mill support, right? So like Succumb, for example, is another one, right? Like that card has never looked better because it was kind of a joke in the last format, but like, yeah, it seems like they kind of have enough support for actually just like, payoffs for just discarding, period, or having so many, a certain number of cards or whatever, like. So all these little payoffs make it kind of enough of a theme that it's kind of good.
Just to mention it too, I'm personally not a big fan of this card because I think it's a little too situational, but I know I've seen other drafters use it to great success, so one of you guys can talk about it. But this is Lethrai Lobotomy, which is a 1 shadow spell. Sacrifice a relic to kill an enemy unit. That one's times 10 now. Do either of you guys have anything positive to say about it?
I've never got to get the card to work, but that doesn't mean it's not a good card.
It's it says kill an enemy unit and it costs 1, right? So I think it's a very strong effect. Whether you have enough relics that, so it's a conditional removal in that can you play the card is the condition, right? So there's enough support in the format to make this a good card, but whether there's enough support in your deck to make it a good card is the question, right?
Yeah, I mean, Metabot Station comes to mind, right? Where you're not heartbroken about losing a 1/1.
Amberlock.
If you're killing something. Yeah, Amberlock. Yeah, so that's a good one.
There's a lot of support for this to be a really good card. And
then like, obviously your Waystone Gate.
Waystone Gate, right? Like, that's just like cheating.
Draw 2 lands and then kill their best thing and make it 8/8. Yeah.
Yeah.
A couple of cards that were kept that were upped here. So we're seeing Imprison go up. That's of course the expensive card that has the influence going from times 1 to times 10. This card, the enemy players must choose 2 units to sacrifice, or to sacrifice 2 units. For 6 Shadow at once again fast speed. This card was deceptively good. Normally, when you give your opponent the ability to choose, they're always going to pick what's worst for you and best for them. So those cards normally aren't as powerful as they seem. But the fact that Imprison is a fast speed, so you can wait till you could do it in combat or at the end of your opponent's turn, really up the power level on this card. So John, why don't you break it down a little bit as far as like just Imprison being better than it seems?
Yeah, it's not just like you sack 2 guys. It's the whole fast speed, right? Like that's what matters the most here. It's kind of like a weird combat trick more than anything. The fast gaining of influence, that was also a thing in in the last format it was in. I don't really think that's going to matter here. Like maybe you just need the fixing incidentally for something else, but the fact that that's coming at fast speed probably won't matter. But yeah, no, just the fact that they have to sacrifice 2 units like mid combat they weren't planning to, that can really mess up your opponent's plans. So, and it's always been, and I think continues to be in this format, an excellent market option if you have a shadow market going.
Yeah, very good call too. Very good call. We do have a lot of access to the markets in general. So in this format, let's find out if it holds true this season, but I agree. So now this is the card you mentioned earlier, Alex. Why don't you break it down for us? Is Consuming Greed. This is a 2/1 nightmare for 4 shadow. Flying. Summon. You may sacrifice a relic in play. A relic and play a 6/4 Rust Fiend. Of course, this was ×5 in the previous season. Now they bumped it up to ×10. What do you think, Alex? Talk to us about it.
Yeah, I've had success with it already since the switch over. It's just the body that's left behind. 2/1. So it's floor. 2/1 flyer for 4 is not very good, but it can be a finisher, right? Albeit slow. But when you get a 6/4 out of the deal for free, sacrificing a Medibot station, for example, is what I've used. It works quite well. It's just a all round. It's like a big grown test for me. When the opponent does it, I'm like, oh, So it's a great play if you could do it, especially if you're in a found specifically with play your Kantha Raider on 3, play this on 4. It's just yeah, it's like GG.
Yeah.
So,
Metabot on 2, a Kantha on 3, this guy on 4. It's like lol.
Yeah.
Try to kill me, homie. Nice.
Yeah, and like it may seem counterintuitive, but like Okessa's audience, right? Like I know you could just get a 5/5 by slow playing it, but maybe you're not going to hit that 5th power on time. Like powering out this 6/4 could be worth like the gain of tempo or whatever, as opposed to waiting to like pay to get a 5/5 in your hand and then eventually get that down. You know what I'm saying? So like don't rule out sacking even a relic that would get a similar unit eventually anyway, right? Like it's the tempo that you're going for there.
Yeah, very good point. Okay, that's gonna do it for our single faction cards. Going into our multi-faction cards, Purify has been added to the format ×10. I think this is a really good card just because Purify is a spell that 2 power Praxis, silence a unit and deal 3 damage to it. And I think that silence part at the beginning is going to be huge because it gets rid of regen and it gets rid of decay, which I think are 2 very strong battle skills in this format. And just having a card that can negate that really makes a lot of these cards that were annoying before a lot more manageable. We see especially the regen cards, things like the Vine Grafter as well as the Side Street Monitor, that you're just like, oh god, this is so annoying. I can't push through damage or I can't attack because it's an automatic 2/1 because of regen. I think this is going to be very strong. Yeah, John, do you have anything to add about Purify? Or I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Like if you're in Praxis, you're just going to play as many of these, I think, as you can get your hands on. It's like going to be that good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's solid. And it also negates a lot of recursion, right? We see things like Xenon having a lot of recursion with Nectar of Unlife. That kind of numbs it a little bit.
Unfortunately, they get decay coming out right with the nectar because of its
Mhm.
ability. But like, yeah, who cares? You know, it's. I don't know if you guys have played against people like just basically running Darkwater Vines deck.
Yeah.
But this is gonna like hose that strategy completely.
Yep. Let's see. Going up next, vows and seats are the fixing that is times 20. They were times 10, they're times 20 now. So you're going to see a lot more of those in your initial packs, which is good because it kind of helps you stay a little open by aggressively taking fixing. So that's going to be in there. Expect those as well as tokens. So vows, seats, and tokens are all times 20 now.
Symbols
so you can
as
see.
well.
I thought it was only the one symbol those times 20. The rest were times 10.
We didn't talk about this in the show, but we talked about it before the show, right? Like in the Direwolf patch notes, they said fire symbol is 20 times and all the other symbols are 10 times. Like that can't be correct. There's just no way.
Yeah.
So
It was
I
either a
think they're all
typo or a
20.
misclick. So
It seems like they're just, it seems like all the fixing is 20 times. There's a chance the symbols are 10. We're just not sure.
Yeah, I think if it's 4-1, I think probably all the symbols are 10. I think
it could be. It could be either way. It's not clear from Direwolf's notes, but
the only thing that makes me feel like maybe that could be true is because of the inclusion of corrosive dagger, right? It caring the most about fire influence, but I still don't see them doing that because of that. So I think you're right. I think it's just a typo.
Yeah.
Nothing stands out in Rakano. One thing is Renegade Valkyrie went from times 10 to times 5. So, suiting that thing up with the double Malaga munitions isn't going to be as common anymore. Let's see. Seraph is what was added to Combre, which is a powerful card, but that's a legendary, so we're not worried about that. I guess just to mention it, Crystalline Chalice is times 10 now, but that's a rare, so it's a great card, but you may or may not see it. I don't quite think Tunneling Gargantuan. I think 8 power is still way too much. This format is not nearly that slow, so I don't really think that card is worth mentioning all that much. I mean, it's going to do some work when you get to play it, but I don't think it's worth it. It's times 10. But Sodi's Choice, I just want to go ahead and mention it because of the fact that Muster is kind of back in the format, and this card does do a little bit of work. Sodi's Choice is a 2 Elysian fast spell, and you can either play Sandbind on an enemy unit, which is a curse that removes flying or prevents a unit from flying, or negate an enemy fast spell. And sometimes just the negating a fast spell is solid. It makes you feel better about combat tricks, especially the amplify ones, right? That's kind of cool. Like it kind of negates martial efficiency, right? Martial efficiency, is that right? The +3/+3 and give a -1 -0 what? Yeah. But the big thing is that Sandbind, the fact that Sodi's Choice is a spell and then Sandbind is an attachment in the form of a curse that will trigger muster at fast speed off of one card, and also the fact that like it could potentially be a removal spell, right? If you have some big units on the ground but your opponent's flying over, you can Sandbind mid combat before blocks and then block the unit. So there's added value there. Once again, that card is times 10. Not a super overperformer, but worth mentioning. Nothing. In Huru, we're getting the addition of Island's Choice. So, John, you could talk about that card. It's a 3 Huru fast spell. Negate an enemy spell with cost 4 or more, and kill an attacking enemy unit with 4 or more attack.
Yeah, that is an excellent card. Like, on par with that Purify, right? We were just mentioning, like, if you're in Huru, I think you'd play multiple copies of this easily and love it, right? Like, normally you might question the negating 4 or more, but like you just mentioned, even combat tricks like martial efficiency generally cost 4 or more. Because people are amplifying it for as much as possible. Same with, a 1 cost spell like Hardiness. No, that always costs 4 or more as well, right? Like that's just how the format is. So I think that effect is amazing. And then, the exact kind of units you want to kill are ones with attack 4 or more, right? Like they're ones that are attacking you because for whatever reason, you're not able to deal with it, right? on board. That's why your opponent's attacking you. So this deals with that. This is a great card. It's removal. It's just great removal. Oh man.
We're also in a format that has Scythe Slash, and that automatically turns on the island's choice. So that's something else to consider as well.
Sure.
Argentport, nothing really stands out to me. Knight of Sorrow is ×10. That card's always kind of perform because you're getting a 4/4 Paladin with Lifesteal, Tribute +2/+2 for 5 Argentport. So that's something to be on the lookout for. Inquisitor Macdo, but that's a legendary ×1, so you're pretty much almost never going to see it. And then Bully and Streetwise Informant. I don't think Informant's very good in this format. I could be wrong, but I don't think so. Nothing for Feln stands out to me. In Skycrag, though, Mortar is being added at ×10. This is a 4 Skycrag fast spell, deal 4 damage. So we talked about Lightning Strike not being that good, but Mortar can be proactive. It doesn't require the unit to attack, so you can actively take out units on the aggressive side. You could do this when you're attacking post blocks, but it can also go face to break relic weapons and just kill your opponent. So I think that's a solid card to definitely be on the lookout for as well at common ×10. So you will be seeing this. Both play around it sometimes if it's going to be a blowout, and then of course take it when you can. It's a good, and there are some spell damage matters cards in Skycrag, so you can do additional damage with this card. Let's see.
Don't skip over Rock Slide.
The only problem I have with Rock Slide is that we still have Ruinous Burst, right?
This is like strictly better than Ruinous Burst. I mean, I say strictly, but it costs 1 more. But the fact that you can, this one is like a modal spell, right?
All right, go ahead, talk about it, John. I mean, it is at ×5,
but boosted, and it wasn't in the format before. So,
Mhm.
like, it's also replacing like those spells we mentioned earlier as far as the fire damage. It's this is going to be one you'll see more often. Probably, I don't know what Ruinous Burst is as far as its weighting, but like I would play this every time over Ruinous Burst if I'm playing Skycrag and not just fire, because it the fact that you can choose to deal just 2 to a single unit and kill a 2 health instead of only being able to target X1s. I think that's a big deal. Like, and then you just mentioned the possibilities of boosting the spell damage here. So I mean, there's definitely some support for that archetype now. And the other thing with Rock Slide as well is it goes face, right? Additionally, so it's just a nice flexible little damage spell. It's good.
Ruinous Burst is ×10. I just looked it up.
Is it okay? So you still see that a little more often in the packs, as well as this is an uncommon versus common, right? But I don't know. I would I would happily play this over Burst every time.
Fair enough. I don't think anything stands out to me at Stone Scar, but Xenon got a couple of good additions. So, Alex, let's have you start us off with Aramont's Machinations. This is a 6-cost double Xenon spell. And then when you play it, you're able to return a 1-cost unit, a 2-cost unit, and a 3-cost unit from your void into play directly with a +1/+1 and Overwhelm. Tell us about Machinations, Alex.
It's a great card for some recursion out of your void. It's good in colors that have the Mandrake synergies in there, so you could very easily have a very relevant 1-drop to get back. I think you guys mentioned it earlier. I already forgot.
Deep Water Vines.
Yeah, the Deep Water Vines, the vine, getting back your Grafter with the 2-drop slot is just great. Yeah, this is a really good card. It is expensive, but you get a lot of value out of it, even if it's just 2 units for 6. But man, these colors really, really let you hit that 1-drop too, and it's a relevant 1-drop. So I really like this card.
Yeah, it's ×10. And then plus even at the 3-drop slot, if you are Mandrakes, a lot of the bonus ability Mandrakes are at 3 as well. Some of them are at 4 and 5, but there's a good chunk of them at 3 as well. So that's something to consider. And then on the opposite side of that, we have Lethrai Courtier is a 0/3 elf mage for 2 Xenon. When you play a relic, draw the top power card of your deck. And this one is ×10. So John, we're going to be talking about this card some more later, but why don't you talk about it right now? John.
Oh man, I'm muted. Sorry. I love Left Right Courtier so much. uh, it's such a dorky, dirtily looking card. It's a 0/3, right? Um, but that effect is insane. If you get one trigger on that, you're already doing pretty good. But if you manage to trigger this multiple times, like the amount of value it generates is insane. Uh, the fact that it plays the top power of your deck just helps you play cards, in your hand and that you're drawing because you're making sure you're hitting your power drops, and it's also taking power from the top of your deck, which means you're not drawing it. So you're like getting power while making sure you're drawing gas. So it's like the effect is just so good. The downside is you have to play relics to get it to work, but there's I think most decks, especially in those colors, are playing relics. And I think you can prioritize a few happily if you're playing a core tier. Like this is the kind of card like I want to pack one, pick one, and just go crazy. Like I love building around this card. I think it's really strong.
Yeah, I learned it the hard way when it first was on the scene. That card is good, and it's definitely worth removal if you can hit it, kill it, or playing it in your deck as well.
Yeah, luckily with 3 health, it's not just trivial to smack it away with like a relic weapon until a little bit later, like around turn 5 or so, before you can just get a free kill with a relic weapon on a 0/3 in the format.
Mm,
So yeah, I think it'll be pretty good. A lot of like if you can, you usually want to like, play it on turn 4 with say an amber lock, so you can immediately generate value off of it because like that 0/3 is probably not going to do great at blocking anyway. And a lot of times you'll want to just not block to not, in case like they can finish it off with a ruinous burst or something like we just mentioned. You'll probably just let that attack in anyway, that first one. So, right?
yeah,
You really want to get that value off this guy.
most def. And lastly, we have the displays are all in now. Display of ambition, creation, knowledge, menace, and tradition are back in the format. And they're all times 10 solid cards. We've talked about displays plenty of times on this show. They're modial, so some of them have some really strong abilities, but the fact that they're really flexible just makes them that much more powerful. So if you're in those colors, take them. Like we talked about, the fixing has been upped, so there's a higher chance for you to essentially play 2 colors and splash for the 3rd color. So keep a lookout on that. And then finally, Seek Power times 20, just great card. It cleans up your draws because the shuffler doesn't count as a power, so you have a higher chance of having it in your opening hand to kind of clean up your fixing as well as your power draws. And yeah, it's fixing, it's good. It has a 98% chance to always make your deck, so Seek Power. But yeah, that's the draft format update. We'll be back probably in a week or two giving you our impressions of the format, kind of giving you a leg up as far as how to really draft it and what kind of decks we're seeing. But that's our kind of initial impressions of it just on paper. So be on the lookout. I do think it's fun. I'm enjoying it so far. I think you are as well, Alex, correct?
Correct. Anytime they change it up, it's very welcome. I like it.
Sweet. All right, that's going to do our draft update. So let's go ahead and go into some constructed stuff. We finally got it, John, after months and weeks of people waiting and getting little snippets from the community like, hey, announcements are going to come soon, etc., etc. We finally got it late Friday, almost. I mean, it was past their initial deadline, but almost at crunch time. We have our organized play announcement for the 2021 season. What's your initial impressions, man? Are you excited?
I'm very excited. This announcement was like so much more than I was expecting to, like the way they were putting it off, and I was like, my expectations were tempered to say the least. I didn't think that they'd have the same amount of prizes or anything like that. I thought it was gonna just be a big reduction.
Mhm.
But I think they blew it out of the water with this announcement. They've like listened to a lot of community feedback. they're incorporating community tournaments as far as like ways to qualify for worlds. Um, there are ways to qualify for worlds as well, other than just winning a tournament. Like I think they said if you manage to like top four multiple events, that's another way to qualify. So like, a lot of feedback I was hearing from last season was, you should reward consistent play. Well, there you go. So like they listened to all this feedback, and like they came out with a bang up announcement for organized play this year. 2021 is going to be very good in that regard, at least.
Yeah, I think part of the discussion I think that took so long was, in my impression, I could be completely wrong, was just the Eternal devs kind of negotiating with Direwolf higher ups, trying to really figure out how much money and a budget that they're going to have and how many events to do. Because I could see the devs wanting to push for more, and this kind of being a back burner game for Direwolf, them not necessarily wanting to commit. I could be entirely wrong. I don't know. Maybe they were trying to tweak things, but that was my impression of it.
There's also, I mean, all these quality of life changes that we haven't talked about yet, right? Where they've essentially added ways to do friendly challenges in different, and specify the mode. Right there, they've done all these changes to the decks, and so like I think that was they wanted to make sure that that stuff was technically working before they had made an announcement like this, because as we know now, they integrated community tournaments into the announcement, and you can't have community tournaments unless the game rules actually function properly, which they still aren't, unfortunately, but it's close. Right? Like we kind of had a test run on Tuesday Night Eternal this week, and like the friendly challenge system in Expedition was not working as intended. There was still some throne cards being played off of Speaking Circle, of course. I mean, there's bugs from Speaking Circle still in the game from when the card came out like 2 months ago. So yeah. Anyway, they're working on it. They're doing their best, right? Like, but I think that had probably the most to do with the massive delay there. But yeah.
Yeah, so without further ado, let's go ahead and break this down. So Organized Play returns to Eternal with a 100K on the line in the 2021 World Championship Series. So that's going to be the pinnacle of the season, finishing off at the World with 100K going out to top 8. So, John, you mentioned, let's talk about 16 players from around the globe will qualify for the 2021 Eternal World Championship. Here's how you can get in on the action and claim your seat at the top table. One invite goes out to the reigning champion, which is shout out to Lights Out Ace taking it down last year. 9 seats go to Eternal Open winners, which we'll be talking about here in a moment. 2 go to the community tournament winners, which obviously, like you mentioned, is the Tuesday Night Eternal tournaments that are held by Telemachus. And then, of course, like you also mentioned as well, times 4 seats are going to go to the last chance qualifiers, which are players that are consistently doing well in these tournaments, but not quite taking them down. Opportunities to qualify are spread throughout the season, with seats being awarded for achievement in multiple formats with each new set release. So the opens. Eternal 5K opens. Going forward, each new Eternal set will be celebrated in marquee tournament events for each of our main competitive formats: Throne, Expedition, and Alex Draft. That's right, they're adding limited officially to the competitive scene. In response to community feedback, this represents a substantial increase in competitive draft coverage, with a clear path to World Championship qualification for players who master the limited format. Our first events of the 2021 Organized Play season will take place. Stormbreak is the next set coming out, and this is Throne. It's the 5K Open, March 28th or 26th through the 28th. Then in April, we have Expedition, another open, 5K Open, April 16th through the 18th. And then in May is a Draft 5K for May 7th and May 8th. We'll qualify 3 more players for the World Championship. Future open dates are to be announced later, with an open around once a month. So that's exciting. So they're not overwhelming us with a bunch of grinding and a bunch of testing back-to-back weeks, but they're still keeping it consistent enough so you have something to do every month, which is super exciting. I think a lot of the Eternal teams are going to be excited about this to kind of one-up each other and stuff like that. Event structure. Each open tournament... Go ahead.
Oh, nothing. My mic just picked you up there. I didn't say anything.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Event structure. Each open will use the same structure to reward sustained success across Eternal formats. These events begin with a 2-day open round in which players battle for the best record across 28 games, best of 1. That's pretty much the standard that we've seen so far. I think it's pretty solid. I think it gives you enough games to kind of feel good about your place in the record, and you can kind of space it out. They've typically given us enough time to do it, whether you want to space it out across the full time or do it at the end or in the beginning. We'll talk about that as well in a moment, John, if you want to go ahead and prep that as far as like the whole, it doesn't matter when you play, but it kind of does. The final rounds take place on the third day, Sunday, where the top 64 finishers from the open round face off in an elimination bracket streamed live on Twitch. The winner of the final round earns a seat at the Eternal World Championship with additional prizes for competitors who perform well. New alt art cards. Each of these events will reward a new alt card or alt art card and packs based upon performance. That's pretty standard. In addition to in-game prizes, these events will award cash prizes as follows, which is nice. I'm glad that they've solidified this. 5th through 8th takes $300. 3rd and 4th takes $650. 2nd takes $1,000, with first place taking the world's invite and $1,500, which is sweet. Definitely facilitates playing in more competitive events because it pays for it in the packs and all that sweetness. One thing, a personal note on this is that's why I switched to my Sunday stream to my constructed day, because as these tournaments happen, I'll most likely be taking Sundays off just to continuously support the live broadcasting of Direwolf on these tournaments, and I really don't want to compete with them. So just a personal note on that one. John, why don't you go ahead and do a little quick breakdown as far as the 28 round Swiss thing?
Does it say that it's just going to be exactly like last year's ECQs?
Not yet that it looks like. I didn't see anything, but I feel like it would be the same thing, but I could be wrong. I guess you're right. We could probably wait, but
yeah, I wouldn't. All I know is what you read in the announcement, right? So I don't know. I can make assumptions based on last year, but I don't want to do that. So
okay, fair enough. Mastery medallions and master entry. To recognize ongoing achievement in Eternal, players who are currently in master rank in any format or who reach master rank in the previous month are eligible for master entry with 2 pretty sweet benefits. So this is cool. Instead of having to grind out the masters and the points trying to make it to top 8 and stuff like that, or top 10 and top top 20, top 10 and first place for points and just grinding it out, you actually just get it for being masters, which is sweet out there for you more casual players. I think this is fantastic, and it doesn't really hurt the tournament scene either, which is great. And the 2 benefits are 2 buys. Master entry starts you off with 2 buys in the open round, getting off to a strong 2-0 start, and that much closer to making the cut for finals. And it really does. It makes you feel a little bit better. Trust me, when there's 2 less games that you leave the chance, it puts you in a pretty good spot mentally and emotionally. And then premium alt art. Each open includes alternate art cards. I'm just going to say alternate because that alt art, I don't know why it's throwing me off speech-wise. Alternate art cards among the rewards for every player, which is pretty standard, but with Masters entry, your alternate art cards will be premium, so that's super exciting. Hopefully some of the alt cards, I actually want the art, because typically I don't. Personally, I think they're great. I think they look great. I'm not knocking. I'm not like, oh, that's gross. It's just I usually prefer the original art. Anywho. And the best part, Master entry comes at no additional cost as a reward for who hone their skills outside of the tournament environment. So I guess what this means is, much like we saw with like the League series and things like that, if you pay a little bit more in gems, you get additional benefits, versus this is just tacked on to your standard entry. So everyone's going to pay the same amount to enter the tournament. You just get benefits if you grind it out. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah. There's one last note on this. Players who qualify for master entry will receive a mastery medallion, which lasts until the end of the following month. So if you reach master rank in March, you will last until the end of April, qualifying you for master entry to the Throne, Expedition, and Expedition Opens. But you need to reach master rank in April or May for the master entry to the May draft open. So that's kind of sweet. It pretty much makes it to where you're not locked into having to use that medallion, so to speak, in the current tournament. So if it's Expedition and you don't like Expedition, you could just save it for the following month in the following tournament. Same thing if you're a drafter, you can hold that one for the draft open. You don't have to worry about using it for the Throne. So I think that's sweet. I like it. I think it's a little, just a small modification that makes it, you know, it's like, well, I really don't want to play in this tournament, but I want to use the medallion. Now they kind of give you that slight bonus. I think that's cool. I like it. Let's see. Going on next to the community tournaments, we wouldn't be here if it weren't for all of you, the Eternal community, whose spicy deck list, entertaining Twitch streams, and mostly just really terrible Reddit memes create a vibrant and welcoming home for Eternal players. This year, the 2021 Eternal World Championship Series is excited to include the community-run Tuesday Night Eternal Tournament Series. Shout out to Telemachus once again for doing that. He puts a lot of hard work into it, which will be awarding 2 seats at the World Championship. With weekly events and broadcasts, players looking for a more high-level action and path to Worlds will have even more opportunities to compete. Keep an eye out on the tournament series for Telemachus to announce how he's going to handle giving out those invites, which I'm assuming will be an end of the season invitational type thing, but I don't want to speak for him, so keep an eye out.
I think he announced that, and I think he said it was going to be the winner of the 2 invitationals, but, you know, not the one like this weekend, but the next 2.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah, I think that's solid. And then here's what we were talking about, what you were talking about, John, as far as the last chance qualifiers. We get it. Taking down the top spot at a tournament full of Eternal's best players is no mean feat. That's why we're reserving the last 4 seats at the Eternal World Championship for players who repeatedly demonstrate excellence throughout the championship series, but never quite manage to claim the W. Any player who reaches the top 4 of more than one open will receive an invite to the Eternal Championship, to the 2021 Eternal World Championship. So this is kind of cool, though. Additionally, players who reach the top 16 of more than one open will qualify for a special invitation only last chance qualifier event that will help fill any remaining seats at the World Championship. And then, of course, because, you know, potential awkward things happen, and Eternal's community has been really great about always somehow making these corner case things be a reality, they've added note: in the unlikely event 4+ players qualify through our multiple top 4 finishes path, the field will expand by an appropriate amount of slots to accommodate. While a remote event, we wanted to be upfront about how we would need to handle that, which I think is great because, for example, we had I forgot who it was now, and I feel bad because I want to give him credit, but we had someone in the top 8 of an ECQ that won the previous ECQ. So it was like, well, if they take it down, what happens to the invite, you know? And as highly as unlikely as that is, you know, Eternal's community has a chance of making that happen. So I really like the fact that they kind of taken that into consideration for sure, because I'm sure we have a community that could definitely put multiple people in the top 4 multiple times. John, do you have anything to add about this before we move on?
I mean, I didn't really say anything when you mentioned earlier. Draft tournament. I want to play the draft tournament. Oh, I'm so excited.
Yep, and then I'm gonna be excited to lose to really good constructive players that just want to chant another slot to make it, so they draft and they're like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm a great player, so I'm just gonna smash people. And then drafters being able to shine and kind of get a seat at the table is awesome. It's interesting. It's gonna be interesting to see how they play out at Worlds, right? Because I think all the drafters that qualified through the draft championship, minus Cassandra. I think Cassandra made it. What did he do? Top 16? Top 8? He went top 8, didn't he?
I don't remember for sure, but something like that.
And I think the other 3 just lost in round 1, which is unfortunate. But
I remember Vader doing some cool stuff with those dragons. I remember at least one good game on coverage.
Yeah.
It was kind of weird. Remember they like rebroadcast all the games, so the timing was a little messed up in my head.
Yeah, and shout out once again to Gunner for taking down and becoming our draft champion. So, Alex, What about you, man? Are you gonna be jumping in on these draft championships, or are you not really that competitive?
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna dip my toes in there for sure.
Sweet. All right. Well, let's get do it for the organized play announcement. So, John, you hinted at earlier this. We recently had an update to go along with the draft update, and this is just quality of life and bug fixes. A couple of things that I wanted to bring up that I think is definitely worth noting. One, because it was issues, but two, the fact that it's actually really neat that they've been listening to the community. I think is super cool. One of the big ones that I think in general, I think a lot of streamers and players were talking about in various discords, the regen icon will now be removed when regen is consumed and will now be prioritized correctly compared to other skill icons. And that was something that it wasn't backbreaking, but it just overall felt like a lot of people were having issues with it. And yes, regen does have that like shimmer over the character icon or the card icon, as well as the glowing red bubbles that kind of pop off the icon as well to show that it has regen. But the fact that the beaker remained through regen kind of throws it off a little bit. It makes it a little bit harder to understand, especially the way the eternal icons work, where they all just take up one slot. So now once it's consumed, something else, another battle skill will take priority, which I think is great. So that's a good one. And then there was something else. What was it? While I'm doing this, John, talk about the sling one that was a big one that you were pushing for.
Oh, just some random bug fix, like opponents playing sling, the card sling of the chi, it would just break your face aegis. Like that was pretty annoying. They fixed that, it says, so that's a good one. That's not a quality of life thing. That's just a bug fix.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there you go. That was the other one, too. The other quality of life was the whole expedition challenge thing. So for those of you, I don't know if you guys knew or not, but just to give you a heads up on that, you were only able to challenge people with throne decks. And so with the previous update, they adjusted it so you can actually put your expedition decks and throne decks in different directories or folders, I guess, or whatnot. You just kind of click a tab, and so you don't have all your decks on one page. Well, that made it to where if you wanted to challenge a friend in expedition, and much like what John was mentioning in a community tournament, you had to take the deck, make a copy of it, and then change it over to throne, which was slightly awkward. So they went ahead and adjusted that. Once again, I have the link in the show notes below as far as the full list, but I think those were the big ones that I wanted to hit on, just to show, hey, they are doing some good things and listening to community. So I think that's awesome. So shout out to Direwolf for doing that.
I guess while we're on the topic of sorts, we could mention the changes to how when they change the draft format, how those packs look.
What do you mean?
Well, we call them bot packs, and they don't exist anymore as they've existed in the game since it came out.
Wait, so they've done away with bot packs altogether, or was it just this format?
They didn't announce anything, but I mean, anyone who drafts knows that they changed it. So, without saying anything, right? They have like changed the way that draft packs look when the format changes, right? Before, you just the packs would be full of rares and legends, like however the bots were programmed to take to seed the packs, right? Because of the whole asynchronous drafting thing, you got to have the packs seeded in some way at the start of a format. There's just no other way to do it. And so like there used to be full of rares and legendaries. Like like when the last set came out, it was insane. Like some of these decks that I was getting, right? This time around, like they look much more closely to normal draft packs, which for some people it's a good thing, for some people it's a bad thing. Not here to argue about that. Just here to let people know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a lot closer to what drafting is like. So if you just want pure drafting, I think it's slightly closer to that. The thing is though, is like the signals are still just kind of all over the place. Like I drafted some right when the set changed, and it was disappointing to me that the lack of signals wasn't made up for by some sweet rares and fun cards to play. So I was a little disappointed personally, but um yeah, like I like the way that I like the idea that they're trying to make it more of a genuine drafting experience from the get-go. I like that that's what they're going for, but I don't think they quite got there, unfortunately. But maybe there'll be some more improvements for the next release.
You know what's funny is like for a lot of people, the actual drafting process is the most fun part of drafting, even more than playing the games.
Oh yeah.
So I'm kind of surprised that the devs don't just sit there in their free time and just draft a bunch, you know what I mean? And just save those drafts because
Yeah.
they can essentially, I mean, I know their personal accounts aren't the God accounts where everything's free and whatnot, but if they're just saving stuff for the database, they could just sit there at work, be like, all right, guys, for an hour today, everyone just draft. And then they just save those.
I know, like it'd be both fun and like right. You wonder why they don't do that. I think I think there's many reasons. Like it's probably very time consuming. Like I'm sure the number of seeded packs they need is actually pretty staggering. And like if it's like only a handful of players doing it, they're going to have some personal biases, and I think all the packs are going to show that. So I like the idea of having some computers do it or whatever, but
Mhm.
I think they still need to like to dial it in a little bit still.
I mean, I don't know if it could be that crazy. Like, I know LSV really likes to go deep on some strategies and stuff, but I think I haven't really watched Patrick Chapin draft, but I know like BKA and stuff. Like, I think they're normal. I think I think you just get a normal draft if you draft after them, but I could be wrong. But
I
yeah,
could be wrong as
all
well,
right.
definitely.
Yeah, fair enough.
Just throwing ideas out there.
I mean, I could definitely see LSV just doing horrible signals just to troll people as well. He'll get a kick out of it.
Yeah, I mean, when you're on your 100th one, I think it's inevitable that you start messing around a little bit.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Okay, well, that's going to do it for all the updates. A lot of information thrown at you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's exciting. It's going to be a good year for Eternal. I feel it. I'm excited to be a streamer for it. Which leads us into our closing constructed corner. And we got another sweet brew brought to you by our very own Johnholio. And this is Crystalline Courtiers. So John, why don't you go ahead and talk a little bit about the deck? I'll have the Eternal Warcry link in the show notes down below, so I won't bother reading off the deck list for you guys, because the feedback I got is that, well, I'm not going to write down a whole deck list while I'm listening to you guys. So there you have it. John, break it down for us, buddy.
So yeah, I mean, this is like a tribute to the card we talked about earlier, Lethrai Courtier. Just got introduced to Expedition, so I've got to go make a deck featuring this card and some others that they added to the format as well, including Waystone Gate and Crystalline Chalice. Like those are cards we talked about, with the draft focus today, and I think they're constructed playable, and this is a sweet deck. So another card they added was Display of Knowledge, right? So that's essentially a way to tutor up relics, which is an extremely powerful effect. And another mode of this card is also a removal spell, and another mode is also a buff. Like all three modes are very relevant in this deck of Display of Knowledge. So I mean, maybe that's kind of one of the key cards of the deck. But essentially, it's like a Relic Matters kind of dirtily value deck. I get any deck playing Crystalline Chalice is going to be a value deck, right? But this can also do some explosive things because we're playing like Waystone Gate, Lethrai Lobotomy. Being able to power out 8/8s is a nice way to kill people. But just basically anytime you have this Lethrai Courtier in play, we talked about it earlier, just the way it makes your turns explosive and good, like guaranteed good. You're going to draw power and you're going to draw gas. So if that card's in play and you're just able to kind of enact your game plan, you're going to have a great time. It's when they kill your Lethrai Courtier is when things can go south. So I'm not going to say this is a very competitive deck. I think you can win games at a high level, but you know, when when opponent,
Buyer beware.
yeah, like it's a linchpin, right? Like people will just remove your courtier, and then you won't have as smooth of a time. I mean, you can still get there. Don't get me wrong, like, but it's if you just get to go about your business with courtier in play, you're just going to destroy people. But it's never that easy, right? Um, there's also just some removal in the deck, permafrost, send an agent. Um, that's about it for main deck. We're also running From Below, which is like a full Aurelian card, time on the front, and then triple Feln transmute unit on the back. And in the early game, you don't mind playing From Below to remove a relic. Like that's fine. And in fact, you might, if you've identified that might be important, you might sandbag, that third primal or third shadow just to keep it from transmuting, to keep the kill an enemy relic side relevant in the late game. But that's a specific matchup thing, but just something to keep in mind. The deck does play all three modes of From Below. Another card that actually does things in this deck, and I think when I did the set review with you, I was like, I really just brushed off this card. I was like, that's too much. That's too much. Well, it actually does stuff in this deck. Bracers of Subdual is the card. It was from the last campaign, Buried Memories. I'm going to go ahead and just read the card because it's kind of wacky. 4 double primal. It's a relic. And so it's a 4 of in the deck. It's that good. At the start of your turn, sacrifice Bracers of Subdual to draw a card for each different health among your units. At the end of that turn, play a beast with +1/+1 for each card you played. Okay. So that's a lot of weird stuff there. So essentially, it's like it's a 4 mana draw spell that leaves a unit. It all kind of happens over time. Like it doesn't all just happen right away. But when you think of it as like draw 2 or 3, play a 3 or 4 drop, basically, is kind of how it plays out usually. And the fact that it's a relic means that when you play it, it can draw you a power off the top of your deck as well. But now this card actually does its thing, and it does it well because um, unfortunately a lot of our units actually share health, but fortunately we're also playing Crystalline Chalice, which means you can selectively change the health of some of your units in play. So I find that often I'm able to get this to draw me 3 cards, and then it makes usually about a 4/4 or 5/5, and that's that's a great turn. Like it just fills up your hand, and you play your cards, and you just keep doing your thing. Like this is the draw spell this deck didn't know it needed, and it actually plays great. Um, kind kind of moving on to another card here, Moonstone Vanguard's in the deck. That's kind of it's not really thematically there, except that we're already just playing both Restorative Process and Impound in the market, which both just have a mode of drawing Sentinels from your void, and it's just a solid expedition card. So I feel like it's fine in the deck. Um, I, I don't think it's necessary, so that's like a place where you might find something else to swap in or whatever. And then we've also got a one of here, Quicksilver Mirror, which is our finisher. It's crazy good in this deck. Just copying 8/8s every turn is extremely powerful. In case you were wondering, and I'm sure this will change quickly, but as the format started this week, people are generally unprepared to remove, a turn 4 or 5 8/8 that's multicolored. Like Send an Agent doesn't hit it, for example, because of its multicolored nature. Um, and if people are playing Sling or something, that doesn't quite get there on an 8/8 either. So yeah, that's a powerful unit in this format, just an 8/8 giant. And then yeah, we're running Logistics Expert as both an early mana ramp unit, as well as this is a late game deck. It definitely can play this as a 4/5, or it can even amplify it twice. And I've had plenty of board states where I'm actually Quicksilver Mirror copying Logistics Experts, and just because it's a huge overwhelm unit when you just have a ton of power. And this deck, like if it goes late, you always have so much power because of the way Courtier works. So Anyway, yeah, that's basically the whole deck.
Well, and then plus, if Quicksilver Mirror copies the expert, it you're not using any power, and it still will trigger the amplify, so you can pump it as many times as you want.
It like exactly it scales up, like it copies it at the stats of the last one. So like I mean I've made him like 24 or whatever, 24 25 overwhelm guy or whatever. Like yeah, exactly. I didn't exactly kind of get there on that explanation. Thanks Jedi for clearing that up. Yeah, it's
I mean, it's the least I could do. You help me
powerful.
out 90% of the time, so I can at least return their favor every once in a while.
Yeah, that's where I was going with that. But because like it's just paying 9 every turn is not great. But no, it like scales up every turn. It's crazy good. So yeah, like every piece of the deck kind of synergizes a little bit with itself, and yeah, it's a synergy kind of value deck, I guess I would say. And yeah, it's a fun one to play. Definitely can win at any level, but I'm not going to say it's tier 1 or anything close to that. So yeah, get out there and have some fun with it. If you like core tier stuff, you'll like this for sure.
There's absolutely nothing wrong playing a deck you have fun with,
Core tier 2. Love it.
Yeah, it's a core tier 2 deck.
Oh, I like that. Nice. Well done, Alex. I dig it. All right, thanks, John. I appreciate that. Once again, you can catch the deck list in the show notes down below if you want to check it out. But that's going to do it, guys. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us this week. I hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back next week for some sweet, safe crafts from John. So be on the lookout for that one. Of course, you can check out the video version on youtube.com/EternalJourney, twitch.tv/Jedi_EJ every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, and Sunday. And of course, feel free to join us in the Discord link down below where you can chat with us around the clock every day, help you with your decks, help you with your drafts, and all that good stuff. All right, guys, that's going to do it. So until next time, as always, happy gaming.
Good night.
Good luck in your draft use, everyone.